The day Miriam was cast out of the law family, I was the only one who stayed by her side. Over the next 6 years, I helped her build connections, raise capital, and gradually erected a business empire that belonged to us. On the day she became CEO of the law corporation, her first love, Oscar, returned to the country. While I was out there fighting for her, Oscar had been accompanying her for 6 years from across the ocean. She began to regret marrying me so early. Without telling me, she secretly appointed Oscar as her personal assistant. Later, during a banquet, one of her desperate business rivals, driven mad by her oppression, barged in with a homemade bomb. Everyone scattered in panic. Her first love even flung her hand away and ran for his life alone. Only I stayed behind and shielded her from the blast, my body torn apart by the explosion. In my final moments, coughing up blood, I grabbed her hand and asked the question that had haunted me for 6 years. These 6 years, in your heart. Before I could finish, Miriam yanked her hand away and rushed toward Oscar, who was screaming because his arm had been grazed by shrapnel. Turns out, the answer had always been there. Why bother asking? That time, I closed my eyes for good, with a faint smile of release at the corners of my lips. When I opened them again, I had returned to the day of our wedding. Aboard a luxurious cruise ship, without hesitation, I ripped off my boutonniere, stripped off the tux, and dove straight into the sea to escape the marriage. But just as I climbed ashore, I realized the beach was already packed with people. Massive speakers were blasting the wedding march. A woman in a wedding dress gracefully walked up to me. "Mr. Domingo, will you marry me?" Chapter 1. Congratulations, groom. You're marrying such a gorgeous bride. We're all so jealous. The guests' cheers snapped me back to reality. I knew I had returned to the day of my wedding with Miriam. Only, even though this was my wedding, I was not the man being called groom. I leaned against the wall near the aisle and looked ahead. A man and a woman stood there, surrounded by a dozen people. The woman was breathtakingly beautiful, wearing a pure white wedding gown. My wife, Miriam, and the man beside her, her first love, Oscar. Even from afar, I could see he was wearing the exact same tux as me. Standing side by side, Miriam didn't confirm nor deny the guests calling him the groom. Instead, she simply smiled and introduced Oscar to the crowd. No wonder everyone mistook him. Even though it was my second time witnessing this scene, my heart still ached faintly. Miriam Law had always been the Law family's beloved daughter, admired by countless suitors, but she only had eyes for Oscar. Even after she was disowned by the Law family and Oscar abandoned her, I burned through my family fortune to build her a vast business empire and help her win back the Law family's favor. All she gave me was a cold thank you and a dismissive "I'll pay you back someday." She never understood that a husband and wife are supposed to be one, not separate individuals, and she certainly forgot why she had been expelled from the Law family in the first place. The Law family had wanted to align with ours, the Lin family. The family patriarch even hinted he wanted me and Miriam to marry, but Miriam had been utterly obsessed with Oscar. Oscar was average at best, poor social skills, no talent. He had no shot at promotion in the Law corporation, yet he was ambitious, unwilling to settle for mediocrity. So Miriam, desperate to boost his profile, gave him a project worth billions, one I was on the verge of closing myself. He botched it beyond recognition. The project burned to ashes, and the Law family faced damages in the hundreds of millions. The company was severely crippled. Thousands of employees lost their jobs. Households were thrown into chaos. The public was furious. Oscar, meanwhile, had already fled overseas, leaving Miriam to bear the fallout. It was my father who stepped in to plug the gap, suffering major financial losses to keep the Law family afloat. Miriam was then exiled from the family, nearly homeless, until I gave her everything I had left to help her rise again, eventually regaining the Law family's approval. The entire industry praised my courage and devotion. One of the top tycoons even declared, "If Domingo becomes my son-in-law, he'll be the world's richest man within a decade." Everyone thought Miriam would be overwhelmed with gratitude and fall for me in the end. But I was the only one who knew. She never felt grateful, only resentful. I overheard her phone call with Oscar. She complained that if I had just completed the project before handing it over to Oscar, none of this would have happened. He wouldn't have had to leave the country. They wouldn't have been separated. She conveniently forgot she was the one who snatched the project in the first place. I had warned her there were issues with it, but she snapped back impatiently. Oscar graduated from a top university. You think he can't handle it? If you're just jealous, say so. Still, thanks to me, the Law family began accepting Miriam again. The patriarch even came to me with the proposal they'd delayed for years, the arranged marriage. I turned him down without hesitation. I knew all along she loved Oscar. I didn't want to end up empty-handed, and I didn't want to see the woman I loved in pain. Better I suffer alone than have us both suffer. Back in grade school, I was born weak due to a strange illness. The other boys often beat me up to prove their manliness. Even the teachers couldn't stop it. Every time I reported them, they retaliated even harder afterward. Just when I was teetering on the edge of despair, a little girl burst into my life. She marched in with a bunch of kids behind her, acting like a mini-gang boss, and beat up my bullies. Then she warned them, "Domingo is under my protection." From that day on, her young silhouette was etched into my heart. But now, the law patriarch told me Miriam had not only agreed to the marriage, but she was the first to say yes. I wavered. After all, when your childhood goddess stands before you and says, "Marry me," who could resist? But it wasn't until after the wedding that I learned the truth. The law patriarch had kept one thing from me. Miriam had indeed agreed willingly, but only because Oscar's business venture overseas had failed, and he was drowning in debt. The law family's offer was clear: marry me, and they'd pay off his debt, even hand over the entire law corporation to her. Chapter 2. Bro, you. A hand landed on my shoulder, pulling me back to the moment. The noise around us gradually quieted. It was almost time for the wedding to begin, and the groom and bride should be getting ready. I turned my head to see a young man looking at me with a complicated expression. Or rather, he was staring at the boutonniere on my chest, the one only the groom was supposed to wear. He must have seen what happened earlier. He probably wanted to comfort me, but didn't know where to start. I gave him a faint smile, patted his shoulder. Then, before he could react, I took the wine glass from his hand and downed it in one gulp. "Thanks, brother." I strode down the aisle while others looked on, bewildered. I headed straight for the deck. Heaven had granted me a second chance, bringing me back to my wedding day. That could only mean one thing: it was giving me a chance to choose differently. Last lifetime, I lived for you. This time, I'm going to live for me. Forget about some goddess. Forget about I must marry her or no one. To hell with all of it. While I was walking away light and free, the wedding scene behind me was falling into awkward silence, because the bride had been waiting a long time, but the groom still hadn't shown up. Miriam stood on stage, her knuckles pale from clutching her hands too tightly. The MC tried to liven things up with jokes. Then, suddenly, his eyes landed on the boutonniere pinned to Oscar's chest. His eyes lit up and he chuckled. "So the groom has been here all along, playing hide and seek with us. Ah, come on up now, don't keep the bride waiting." Oscar lit up with joy and was just about to step forward when, "Don't you dare come up." A scream froze the entire room. Oscar's face stiffened. His foot froze midair. It was the first time Miriam had ever raised her voice at him, but Miriam didn't care what he thought. Her eyes were anxiously fixed on the doorway. If I had been there, I would have been stunned, because Miriam, who once threw away 100 billion for Oscar and never scolded him even when she was kicked out of the family because of him, was now snapping at him just because he tried to walk up onto the stage. Minute by minute, time dragged on. Everyone present could sense the unease in the heart of this young business mogul. Finally, the sound of rapid footsteps echoed from the entrance. Miriam's dull eyes lit up. The crowd sighed in relief. Someone even joked, "The groom's running so fast. Can't wait to see his bride." Ah. Love might arrive late, but it arrives all the same. They're bound to have a happy ending. A smile finally appeared on Miriam's face, but it froze a second later, because it wasn't the groom who came running in, it was a stranger. A young man none of them knew, carrying a tuxedo. A boutonniere was pinned to it. Miriam's breath caught in her throat. Her voice trembled. "Where's Domingo?" The young man caught his breath, then smirked and shook the tuxedo in his hand. "Where else? He ran off and jumped into the sea." "No, that's impossible. Domingo loves me too much to run away." "You're lying. I'm going to find him myself." In her panic, she stumbled off the stage, but tripped on her gown and fell hard to the ground. Her knee scraped against the floor, bleeding, but it was as if she didn't feel any pain. She pushed others away and crawled toward the door, muttering, "He's lying. I need to find him." The young man didn't stop her. In fact, he sneered coldly. "Lying? Why would I lie? 2 grooms for 1 wedding. What? You expect him to stand there and get cheated on?" Miriam froze. He tossed the boutonniere onto the ground in front of her. "Oh right, he told me to pass along a message before he left. He said, let the other guy be the groom. May you two live happily ever after, and have lots of kids." The whole venue went silent. Everyone there saw it. This so-called ice queen of the business world, this famously cold CEO, was now crying uncontrollably. Gone was her usual grace and poise. In that moment, she was nothing more than a heartbroken girl, abandoned by the men she loved. Tears fell as she choked out, "Why you mean, he wants me to marry someone else, on our wedding day?" Chapter 3. The young men had already left, and only Miriam remained, clutching that boutonniere tightly, lost in her own thoughts. Oscar tried to help her up, but she slapped his hand away. She gave him a venomous glare and rose to her feet. In that moment, she transformed once more into the cold, commanding queen of the business world. "Domingo, you won't escape me," she shouted into the distance, her swollen eyes still sharp as if she could see me miles away. Chaos erupted aboard the luxury cruise ship, but none of it had anything to do with me. I was still swimming in the ocean. Even though the shore wasn't far, it was still a struggle to make it there. A small part of me regretted it, not the part about ditching the wedding, but the fact that I'd tried to act cool and hadn't taken the lifeboat. Still, if I had to do it all over again, I'd jump into the sea just the same. No reason. It just looked badass. A man's idea of cool is often completely irrational, like randomly pulling a jump shot mid-walk. Also, time was tight. Let's just say I took it as a symbolic rebirth, washing away my miserable past life with salt water. As I neared the shore, I glanced back one last time at the cruise ship. Miriam. From this moment on, we're done. But just as I turned back, I noticed a crowd gathering on the beach, and faint music floated toward my ears. It sounded like a wedding march. Wait, wasn't this beach empty the first time around? I didn't remember anyone getting married here in my past life. I didn't dwell on it. My whole body was shivering from the freezing water. I powered forward and crawled up onto the sand. Just as I made it ashore, beams of light suddenly flashed on me, forcing my eyes shut. Then came the gasps from the crowd nearby. Holy crap, when did a bride show up here? She's gorgeous. Hey, doesn't she look kind of familiar? Like that woman we always see on TV. You mean the rising star in the business world, the CEO of the law corporation? Yeah, that's her. It looks just like her. Come on. No way. Didn't she already announce her wedding's happening on that luxury cruise over there? But wait, hold up. I think it's really her. She's walking toward a man. I couldn't catch every word, but I definitely heard law corporation and wedding. My brow furrowed. Was Miriam chasing me down? No, impossible. In my last life, I waited backstage for a cue during the ceremony. She intentionally delayed everything. By the time I arrived, Oscar was already on stage. If I hadn't shown up when I did, she would have gone through with that wedding. Back then, even though no one said anything out loud, I could feel the way they all looked at me, like I was the joke. Oscar might have stepped down, but deep down, everyone probably thought I was the one who crashed the wedding and stole the bride. Maybe I misheard. I raised a hand to block the harsh lights and adjusted my eyes. Slowly, my vision cleared. A silhouette was approaching, backlit and glowing. She was in a wedding dress, the lights shining on her like an angel descending. My eyes blurred from the brightness, but the closer she came, the more familiar she seemed. Suddenly, she stopped right in front of me and took my hand, still wet and covered in sand. Domingo, she said softly, will you marry me? Chapter 4, was that Miriam's voice? I stared at her in shock. She really came off the cruise ship, and she just asked me if I would marry her. Sure, she agreed to marry me back then of her own free will. But everything she did was for Oscar. Otherwise, Oscar wouldn't have appeared on stage during our wedding. Ever since we got engaged, she hadn't even looked me in the eye. So why would she say something like that now? Could this be another one of their little games? Am I just their entertainment again? Or maybe she's pissed at Oscar and using me to get back at him. The impact of it all left me completely dazed. Seeing I didn't respond, Miriam's face visibly paled, and then the crowd around us erupted, because the moment she asked that question, countless neon signs lit up in unison. Glowing words flashed all around. Miriam loves Domingo. Miriam Domingo forever, and that solemn, sacred wedding march played in the background. Everyone became certain this was the Miriam, the rising star of the business world, the CEO of Law Corporation. Holy crap, she's serious. That's really the Law CEO. But isn't the proposal supposed to be the guy asking the girl? Why is it reversed? Is this how rich people do things? Rich folks live in another world, I guess. Wasn't the wedding supposed to be on that yacht? What are they doing on the beach? Is sea breeze more romantic or what? Hey, are y'all missing the point? The guy's not even reacting. That's the Law CEO. Now that you mention it, wait, that dude looks familiar. All these voices echoed in my ears as I finally snapped out of it. So it really was Miriam standing in front of me. Tears welled up in her eyes as she repeated herself. Domingo, will you marry me? I looked at her closely, her eyes swollen as if she'd been crying. Makeup slightly smeared, her face delicate and heartbreaking. But under the weight of everyone's expectant gaze, I gave a cold answer. No, I won't. I pulled my hand free from hers and walked away without looking back. All that remained was Miriam frozen in place and a crowd in utter chaos. Chapter 5, on the way home. My heart wasn't calm at all. Across both lifetimes, that was the first time Miriam had ever said something like that to me. Honestly, I was reborn, not a soul transplant. People are pathetic like that, always hung up on the past. For a moment, her words almost shook me. But indecision only breeds disaster. Since I've chosen to cut ties with her, I won't turn back. After resting for the night, I turned on the TV, only to see the top headline, Runaway Groom Crashes High-Profile Wedding. Expressionless, I turned it off and started thinking about how I could restore the Lin family's former glory. In my past life, I poured myself into helping Miriam. That weakened the Lin family and made the Law family stronger. My father ran himself ragged because of me. As I was deep in thought, the doorbell rang. When I opened it, there stood Miriam. I went to shut it immediately, but she was too quick and blocked it with her arm. Ah. The door pinched her arm. She teared up and cried out, "Domingo, you hurt me." I had no choice but to let go, and she slipped inside in one smooth motion. I sighed. Fine, let's just get it all out today. I'd been her simp for so long, and now that I suddenly stopped simping without a word, of course she'd come looking for answers, but before I could say anything, she threw herself into my arms. "Domingo, why did you run away yesterday? Do you know how heartbroken I was?" I kept a cold expression, trying to push her away, but she clung to me like an octopus. I couldn't shake her off. "Miss Law, please respect yourself. We are not married, and we never will be. You love Oscar, don't you? Well, you're free now. You two can be together openly." I don't want him. I only want you. That sentence hit like a bolt of lightning. Miriam clung to me even tighter like a hurt kitten. What she said next stunned me even more. "Domingo, I know you were reborn too. In the last life, I wronged you, but you already ran from the wedding. Don't you see what that's done to me? You got your revenge. Isn't that enough?" Tears streamed down her face. "You used to protect me so much. You never let me get hurt. But now you're hurting me like this. How is that fair?" So, she was reborn too. Everything suddenly made sense. I let out a deep breath and said, "Miss Law, I'm sorry for the damage the runaway wedding caused to your reputation, but I'm really tired. I don't want to keep doing this. Isn't this a good thing for you? Now you can be with Oscar. Give him your whole heart." As I said that, I felt a wave of relief wash over me, like I had finally broken free from invisible chains. But Miriam frantically shook her head. "No, I don't want him. I want you." I was starting to get angry. I forcefully pulled her off me. "Miss Law, haven't you tortured me enough? I've seen through your games already. You've toyed with my feelings for 6 years. What more do you want from me?" I knew Oscar had racked up a huge debt. Miriam might be a CEO, but she didn't have enough power to cover it using the company's money. Marrying me had been her way of striking a deal with the Law family. But why should I have to pay the price? Chapter 6. No, that's not it. It's not because of him. I've already cut ties with Oscar. Then she told me what really happened on the cruise ship. She had already regained her memories from her past life while still on board. During our earlier conversations, she deliberately avoided exposing the truth about Oscar. In our last life, she exposed me at the altar. This time, she wanted to make things right, so she flipped the script. Oscar would be the clown this time. That's why he didn't appear on stage. A simp in a tux, crashing a wedding he wasn't invited to. She was trying to earn back my trust, piece by piece, to atone for the hurt she caused me. What she didn't anticipate was that I had also been reborn, completely throwing her plan off track. She said that after I died in our previous life, she finally realized who truly loved her. She took care of my parents like they were her own, and had already cut Oscar out of her life, cupping my face in her hands. She looked into my eyes, filled with sincerity. "Domingo, can we start over?" I went silent. If I was honest with myself, had I really let her go? Now that fate had wiped the slate clean, had removed every obstacle between us, was I really unaffected? The answer stayed hidden in my heart, where no one could reach it. Seeing that I was hesitating, Miriam dropped a reason I couldn't refuse. "The Law family is willing to help the Lin family rise again, no conditions." My pupils contracted. Last time, in order to plug the financial hole Oscar had left behind, the Lin family had been nearly drained dry, and afterward, they continued helping me support Miriam, sparing no effort. I remembered how much whiter my father's hair had gotten in just a single year. I couldn't begin to imagine the pressure he was under back then. I looked into her eyes, and a faint smile tugged at my lips. "All right." Miriam beamed and rested her head against my chest, overflowing with happiness. "Domingo, I'll never let go of you again." Chapter 7. Miriam went back. She needed to reorganize the wedding. My father returned. The first thing he said to me was, "Domingo, are you all right?" My nose stung. I didn't pretend in front of him. I broke down and cried. He didn't ask anything, and I didn't explain anything. Just like always, no matter what I did, he supported me unconditionally. Miriam and I set the wedding date for May 20th. Everything was moving full steam ahead, but online, the public opinion wasn't exactly friendly, all because of the runaway groom scandal. The internet was filled with criticism aimed squarely at me. I found him. That guy who made the Law CEO chase after him is named Domingo. What a piece of work, getting a woman to chase him twice. Domingo, wait, isn't he from that almost bankrupt Lin family? Yeah, that's him. Looks like a freeloader with a pretty face. I don't know what makes him think he's too good for her. She throws herself at him and he says no. What a poser. Exactly. If I had a shot at marrying the Law CEO, I'd be a stay-at-home husband in a heartbeat. Bro above me. Stop daydreaming. The internet was in complete agreement. They hated me. Not that I blamed them. In all those years I helped Miriam. I stayed in the background. I never made public appearances. She always faced the spotlight alone. She needed to show loyalty and gain trust if she wanted to return to the Law family. I was the man behind the curtain, but to my surprise, before I could even react, Miriam herself blew up on her official account and clapped back at all the haters. Even so, she didn't reveal the truth behind everything. I didn't care. After we got married, I gradually took over certain responsibilities in the Law family. I even redirected some resources to help revive the Lin family. The Law family elders didn't object, but the younger generation definitely wasn't thrilled. They didn't know the full story and assumed I was just another pretty boy living off my wife, riding Miriam's coattails to power. I understood. The cake was only so big. The more I took, the less they got. The Law Corporation was massive, full of ambitious, self-righteous talents. Me, a total outsider, sitting above them. Of course they were bitter, so they set traps for me. I lost several deals thanks to their tricks. Just when they thought the Law family would cut me loose, Miriam made her move. She teamed up with the elders and kicked those troublemakers out of the company. Then, to make up for it, she handed me even greater authority. Suddenly, no one dared challenge me again. The outside world erupted with new gossip, branding the icy CEO of Law Corporation a total simp for her husband. Miriam became the country's new role model wife. Even I started to wonder, was this dream actually coming true? Had Miriam really changed? Chapter 8. Over the years, I gave everything I had to the Law family, so much that I nearly forgot about the Lin family. Under my help, the Law family reached new heights. In the 4th year, Miriam secured an overseas project worth hundreds of billions. Without hesitation, she handed the entire thing over to me and asked me to take full charge. So I flew overseas and registered a new company under my name to manage the project. And just like that, I was gone for 3 whole months. During that time, Miriam video called me every single day to check on me, caring, loving, devoted. It seemed like time only deepened her love. We even appeared on television together once, hailed as a model couple. Meanwhile, the Lin family quietly faded from public attention. It was as if I'd forgotten why I had ever promised Miriam anything in the first place. The Law family was more than happy to see that happen. Everything seemed to be going perfectly, until, 3 months later, Miriam rushed overseas on a last-minute flight. She looked frantic, on the verge of tears, and told me something was wrong with the project, something illegal. Truth be told, when she first called me over, she didn't explain anything. She just told me to set up a company in my name to coordinate. In reality, I was just there to take the fall. Tears streaming down her face, she asked, "What do we do now?" I gently wiped her tears away and said, "Don't worry, I'll think of something. But, we're married, Domingo. If this doesn't get handled fast, the entire Law family will collapse." Her red, swollen eyes made my heart ache. As I paced back and forth, a decision formed in my mind. I turned to Miriam and said, "Let's get divorced. That way, the full legal responsibility would fall on the Lin family alone." Divorce. Miriam looked like she'd been struck by lightning. "But if we divorce, what about you?" I looked into her eyes, smiled bitterly, and said, "It's okay for you. I'd do anything." Chapter 9. Well, in the end, I didn't actually follow through on that promise. The Law family collapsed. Miriam went to prison. Oh, and Oscar, he went in too. As Miriam was being loaded into the police car, she screamed like a madwoman, "It was you. You set me up." I stared at her with feigned tenderness. "Miriam, use this time to reflect on yourself." She tried to lunge at me, but the officers strapped her down and shoved her into the back seat. "I won't let you get away with this." Sob. I dropped the smile and calmly returned to the Law estate. The Law patriarch looked like he'd aged 20 years overnight. He stared at me with a complex expression. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "Do you really think this is what Miriam deserves?" I looked at him and almost laughed. Maybe Miriam had regretted some things, but that regret, it was never about me. In my previous life, after I died, my soul lingered for quite a while. I saw everything. Miriam showed no remorse. On the 3rd day after my death, before my 7th-day ceremony even passed, she married Oscar. If that was all, I might have forgiven her. But she crossed a line when she turned her schemes toward the Lin family. She used the fact that I had loved her the most to earn my father's trust. Trust wasn't the right word, he was already broken. She took control of the Lin family without opposition, kicked my father out, and left him to freeze to death on a cold, lonely night. In this new life, I tried to stay low. I blamed myself for being blind and simply wanted to sever ties with her once and for all. But clearly, she wouldn't let me go. Even in this life, she tried to turn me into her clown, again and again. Yet I never once saw love in her eyes. So I agreed. I would use the Law family to rebuild the Lin family. That multi-billion project. I'd known about it in my past life. It came from Oscar. But this time, the Law family had completely let down their guard around me. Without their knowledge, I had slowly transferred all of the Law family's assets under my control. Even that overseas company, I'd long since had it legally reassigned, without her knowing. That divorce, it had been her last chance and she blew it. By then, I was already in the clear. And that billion-dollar fund, I donated all of it to the state. What's mine, I'll never leave a cent behind. What's not mine, I'll never take even one. Chapter 10. I lit a cigarette and walked out of the crumbling law estate without looking back. Behind me, the old man sat alone in a dark corner. I felt no sympathy. He was the head of the law family. He knew what had happened. And still, he allowed it all. Everyone has to pay for their mistakes. The law family was finished. Miriam was now facing the endless night of prison. I returned home and saw a figure standing at the door, aged, but still tall and proud. I smiled, flicked the cigarette away. Dad. I'm home.